Wow, where do I begin? First of all, let me just say that being here at this end of the program, I am but a footnote. What I've heard here today is tremendous. And I just want to say, Dita, congratulations. You epitomize everything that I've been writing about and thinking about when it comes to nursing and Beacon Haven and what this means to certainly the upper Midwest, but to the world. Christian Science nursing is the gift of great price, the pearl of great price that is unique, necessary, and truly, truly a gem. So, what a joy to be participating in Beacon Haven's annual meeting and its celebration of Christian Science nursing care. Not only is it a gift to our field, Christian Science nursing is a gift to the world. How so? It sets a standard. Christian Science nursing sets a standard for nursing and for all care and care facilities because it is based in spirit. And that's something that is so essential and, like so much in Christian Science, so ahead of its time. I remember working at the Christian Science camp in Colorado, which I had an opportunity to do for a number of years. And one of my favorite things to do was to partner with the Christian Science nurse. And that's where I first got the idea, oh, Christian Science nursing is the first aid. You begin with the metaphysics, with the understanding of spirit, and then everything else fills in. Everything else becomes appreciable to the need when the spiritual foundation has been set. And as a Christian Science practitioner, I so admire the job of the nurse. We saw today up in that definition of the nurse in the manual where it talks about proper care, but also demonstrable knowledge of Christian Science practice. You know, early on in the movement, if you were a Christian Science practitioner, you were also a nurse. You were doing both. And, you know, in today's world, we think more compartmentalized, but truly, Christian Science nursing is essential to be able to understand the metaphysics before they ever begin any kind of care with their patient. So not only does the nurse declare the truth, they must continually face down in the sick room whatever mortal mind is suggesting and maintain the truth of being unimpressed with how the material evidence suggests itself. Over the years, I've heard so many different nurses come to me and talk about things that they're trying to see through, and I can feel their deep desire to be able to serve and to be able to serve as Jesus did, who only beheld the perfect man right where the sick or sinning mortal would appear. And this is truly a labor of love. And I don't have to tell any of you here, it's that continuum every day, being willing to look and see what's there and remain unimpressed with how the material evidence suggests itself. Nurses today are today's spiritual Minutemen and women that Mrs. Eddy wrote of when she talked about coming with sandals on and staff in hand, that humble willingness to serve and to do whatever, being ready to care for those who are relying solely on divine science and willing to turn from sense to soul. Am I talking too fast? Okay, please let me know. Okay. I've got a fair amount of material, but I don't, I'm excited to tell you all about it. So slow me down if I go too fast. Okay. The dedicated service and devotion to God to Christian Science and to our beloved leader, Mary Baker Eddy, is what distinguishes the care here at Beacon Haven and, of course, other Christian Science facilities from any other kind of care facility. So I would like to take a moment also to a very heartfelt thank you to everyone here at Beacon Haven, the nurses, staff, administration, the board, the volunteers, everyone who comes together and who maintains and sustains this beautiful idea that is known as Beacon Haven and its rich history of love being expressed. I just want you to know that when you walk in this room today, you feel that love. You feel the devotion and the dedication that is just absolutely present on all levels. And it is humbling to be here among you today, and I'm very grateful for this. So to all of you who are here right now in this room or joining us via Zoom, I am so happy to have this moment to share just a few thoughts about his care doth e'er surround us. There's an old song that begins, what the world needs now is love, sweet love, not just for some, but for everyone. These words, although it was a pop song, are timeless, and they surely apply today to our world. Mankind deeply desires to feel the love and care of God, even if they don't know it. Wherever they are, whatever they're doing, mankind is reaching out for the kind of love that we feel shared here today. There's no question that the world around us can feel dark and uncertain. However, the truth is, this is not new. The world has always felt uncertain. The ancient prophets knew that out of that uncertainty can come great spiritual growth. In 2 Samuel we read, "For thou art my lamp, O Lord, and the Lord will lighten my darkness." Darkness is the first word Mrs. Eddy uses to describe the word night in the glossary in her textbook. She also uses the words doubt and fear. Our world may appear to be thrust into the darkness of night, not only feel filled with fear, worry, and doubt, but moral idiocy, prejudice, divisiveness, envy, jealousy, anger, hatred, criminality, lawlessness, terror, violence, war. I could go on, but I think you get the point. One worries, how does one walk the streets, ride a bus, attend a gathering, travel the country, and still feel safe? All the while, darkness, doubt, and fear appear to be biting at our heels. Where does safety lie? That was a question I struggled with when my son, who was serving as an engineer in the United States Air Force in 2008, was deployed for a year to Afghanistan. I was gripped with worry, doubt, and fear. There was a war raging there. However, a wise Christian Science practitioner and my teacher simply said, "He brings his safety with him." Mr. Ferris was always a man short on words but big on meaning. And I will tell you that that simple thought would give me great peace in the long months that would follow. And I prayed for my son Jim every day. But one day, out of the blue, in the middle of the day, it came to me to stop what I was doing and pray specifically for him. And I did. I was comforted knowing that God's thoughts passing to man are angels that were not just with me, but were surrounding him simultaneously. There's no space. There's no distance. Now is the only time. I thought about the words in the 91st Psalm. He gives his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. Well, much later, I would learn that at approximately that time, My son and his troops were traveling in jeeps over mountain roads and crossing a river that was normally not too deep to drive through. However, due to the spring runoff, the river had become more swollen and treacherous with a strong current. Just as my son's jeep entered the water, it began being swept down the river. However, the driver found enough traction on the river's bottom and safely crossed over to the other side. They were safe. In the words of hymn 9, he knows the angels that you need and sends them to your side to comfort, guard, and guide. And how beautifully God's angels appeared that day. And there were many other instances of coming through danger that year for my son that I would later learn, such as intelligence had told his troops that there were snipers throughout a village that they had to walk through, and not a single shot was fired. There was a moment when his troops were a target of an ambush and a roadside bomb, and it didn't touch him. Growing up in the Christian Science Sunday School, he saw many examples of God's protection, and he too knew that he brought his safety with him, just as each one of you do wherever you are, whatever you're doing. It comes right with you. From the Christian Science hymnal, the words articulated the deep gratitude that I felt upon his safe return. Holy Father, thou hast taught us we should live to thee alone. Year by year thy hand hath brought us on through dangers oft unknown. Even when we don't know it, God is on the job to protect, defend, and to keep us safe. We can never be outside of God's safety. And that's why the words of hymn 10, his care doth air surround us, so resonates with me. And so when I was asked to give this talk today, that idea had been something that I had been affirming daily in my practice and for the world. I mean, you can't hardly turn on the television or look at your phone or pick up a newspaper and not have headlines that make you go, sit down and pray. There's so much, and it's at such rapid fire, but yet God is a very present, powerful help. There will never be a moment where we are without our sense of spiritual composure to be able to see through the claim and see it for what it is. Whenever the human circumstances may appear, we bring our safety with us, and this truth understood brings God's light and ever-presence and is a law to every problem, and it is immediate. Why? Because God is always present, and he has no opposite, and all is one, God, man, and the multiverse. There's no other power or presence but God. So darkness, doubt, and fear are an illusion and have no power to resist the truth. Now, they may seem to obscure truth, but they cannot extinguish it. The seeming absence of God's presence is only a false belief that for a moment appears real to human consciousness. But just as in the darkness of night, we may not see our surroundings, but they remain present with or without the light. Truth is ever present and is divine light. Therefore, of its own volition, it is forever dawning in human consciousness, outshining the lie of material being. Truth is unstoppable because man is what truth is knowing. Therefore, man is the very thought of God and innately understands God and truth because man is the light of truth. We're not just people thinking about God. We're the very thought of God. We are what God is thinking, and therefore truth is inherent, innate, and unstoppable. Human consciousness imbued with this spiritual understanding, we think of as being spiritually minded. However, if human consciousness becomes more acquainted with the ways of the world, and believes material beliefs, one might say that's being materially minded. But Mrs. Eddy wrote, corporeal sense or error may seem to hide truth, health, harmony, but science, the sunshine of truth, will melt away the shadow and reveal the celestial peaks. Through divine science, the activity of the Christ reveals material beliefs to be erroneous. Truth understood is pure light that naturally eliminates the darkness and illusion of error. And Mrs. Eddy wrote, the recuperative action of the system, when mentally sustained by truth, goes on naturally. Our thought imbued with the truth is the natural defense against mortal beliefs and can find no lodgment in our thought imbued with the Christ. Nothing can resist the truth. And that is why the belief of incurability is a lie about man's immortality. Actually, it's an impossibility. There's no such thing. And if you hear it, don't believe it. Nothing is incurable in the realm of the real. When man awakens to the divine authority of truth by which man lives, he will no longer fear that disease can kill him. The myth of incurability will be disproved. Talking too much, sorry. Many years ago, my father-in-law, who did not practice Christian Science, but knew that I did, asked me to pray for him. As I held him in my consciousness as family, I could naturally behold him in his perfect state of being, refusing to see anything but his spiritual, pure reality. Through love's omnipotence and ever-presence, there was no fear in my thought about his health, and nothing could alter my sense of his reality, no matter what the material beliefs were. But to be honest, at the time he asked me to pray, I had no idea what the situation was. It would be much later that I would learn that he had been diagnosed with an incurable disease and was not expected to live very long. He was under medical care, but at that moment in his extremity, he believed in the power of God and prayer more than the diagnosis of disease. He put his trust in God, and he saw the belief of disease fade from his experience. Within 6 months, the doctors asked him to come to this office. He was at the Marshfield Clinic at the time. There were 6 doctors. And they looked at him and they said, Pat, we cannot explain what's happened to you, but there's no trace of the disease. If we were you, we would thank God. And it never returned. No matter what man's human circumstances may be, even if he only catches a glimpse of truth, pinprick of truth and light, it will illumine the darkness. It's so powerful. In Jesus' words, knowing the truth indeed sets us free and enables us to hear directly God's angel messages. And these messages are there for everybody all the time. Once again, whether or not we recognize it for what it is, it is. Mrs. Eddy wrote, the intercommunication is always from God to his idea man. All communication is between God and man. God is speaking to you, and God is speaking to me simultaneously. There's nothing in between. It's immediate, no medium. It's God to me, God to you, God to me, God to you. That's the intercommunication. There's no other source. And actually, aren't you glad? What a relief. That means Each one of us is receiving the same godlike messages at the same time. And you or I do not need to convince someone else. They need to hear what I'm hearing or you're hearing because God is speaking directly to them. And they will hear the messages relative to what they understand about God. And that's the key. And frankly, it's none of our business what anybody else is hearing from God. That's unique to them. What they understand is where they're at that moment. So it's not my business to try to convince, influence, cajole, coerce, or argue my point. And if asked for your opinion, remember Mrs. Eddy's wise counsel. Human opinions are valueless, so give them sparingly. My only business is to love that person and never to criticize, judge, or condemn. It's essential to trust the fact that God is in direct communication with each one of us all the time because there's only one mind. We have a lot of different human opinions, but just one mind doing the communicating. So when we find ourselves in a relationship at home or at work or in the community with someone who holds very different human opinions, it is tempting to want to either change their opinion or at very least convince them why you're right and they're wrong. The only change that will be meaningful is to change our own opinion about them. And that we could ever see an incorrigible human and replace it with the truth that all that is real is God's spiritual and perfect man, period, full stop. All we have to know. I learned this lesson the hard way. While serving on a church committee with a member who would sometimes say things that felt a little harsh, she made a comment. Sometimes people say one thing and do another. She looked directly at me. I sunk into my chair thinking, oh no, what did I do? Then I quickly reversed this and thought, no, she's God's perfect child. But I couldn't resist. Yeah, but she's got a lot to learn. I self-righteously rested on that thought, negating my previous one. So in my next conversation with her, I blurted out, why did you say that to me? Now she was upset with me. She had not only not intended the comment to be about me, but she was also hurt that I would think that about her. I apologized profusely. Eventually, she did forgive me. But I have to say, it was a very valuable lesson. It is so important what we think, what we hold in consciousness. We think we can hide those things. You really can't. It is essential that we are knowing and holding to what is true and mean it. We can hide it for a while, but inevitably it comes around. So handle it and handle it to its absolute, complete state where we see error, evil, mortal mind as nothing. If one holds material beliefs as reality, if one believes in what Mrs. Eddy calls the law of opposites, then one will hear the same angel message from God, but it will come to you in reverse, which is why I said it's important what you understand about God. These angel messages, this communication coming directly to you, is always God speaking. But the human consciousness, through this belief of a law of opposites, will reverse it. And in human consciousness, the material senses acting through that law will reverse it so that what is good will appear bad. But to reverse this effect is to see as God sees, and this requires spiritual sense. And Mrs. Eddy defines spiritual sense as the constant conscious capacity to understand God. It is a constant, vigilant activity to stand porter at the door of thought, and we're well rewarded if we do. We become spiritually fit as we exercise our spiritual sense. And even though the human consciousness seems to entertain both spiritual and material sense, with that spiritual fitness, we're able to pick it out immediately. You know, like the wheat and the tare, we gather in that wheat. These are God's thoughts. The tare we discard, those are the opposite. They're appearing only as an aggressive mental suggestion. Jesus understood that fact so well because he knew God spoke directly to each individual. He didn't even bother to admonish the people who wanted to stone the adulterous woman. He just wrote on the ground. And then he understood, because truth was speaking to them, he could simply state, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." He allowed their own conscience to convict them. Jesus knew that we all hear God speaking directly, and he proved that to be true because that day not a stone was thrown. The more we understand the fact that God is communicating not only to ourselves, but to everyone throughout the world, that care that we're thinking of, that care that we're understanding, is a present reality, and it shines in our individual lives, and it shines throughout the whole world. Knowing all this, you're still going to hear these arguments. Well, fine. If God is speaking and I'm hearing and this is all well and good, why do I still hurt? When will the pain stop? What about my broken bone or my shattered relationship? And what can I do about a world that seems so broken? If God is all good and all is good, why do I or others still hurt? Have we not at some point all found these questions coming to us in some form? These are comments filled with worry, doubt, and fear and appear very real to the material senses. But here's the good news. They're not your thoughts. They don't belong to anybody. They are, as Mrs. Eddy describes, aggressive mental suggestions which operate as vehicles to usher in animal magnetism, which is the specific term for error that seems to operate separate from God. Now, the whole thing is impossible, but it says it is. So, an aggressive mental suggestion is a mortal belief that is coming to man as his own thought. However, it's an illusion. And Mrs. Eddy made a point. Now, she only uses it once, but in the manual, she says, it is our duty. It's not an option. It's our duty to daily handle. And she says that these are aggressive mental suggestions. They're not passive. Because if we're not handling them as nothing, they are handling us as something. These suggestions are mocking the infinite nature of God's angels that are surrounding and caring for us. They suggest that we are vulnerable or not cared for by God, that we can have a pain that lingers, that we can have a bone that's not knitting together, that we can be in the middle of a messy relationship or traumatized by a world that's gone crazy. It suggests all of that. We have a choice. We must choose, and we must see them for what they are. They are not our thought. I want to say that again because it's real important. These negative suggestions that come, and they use the first person pronoun I because they're mocking God. I am that I am. It says I am not. I am not well. I am not good. So it's taking the first pronoun I, which is God, and man who is am, and reversing it. And if we're not spiritually astute, we're going to take that I to think it's ourselves. I am not well. That's not it. It's an inversion of God's angels that are coming to you. A Sunday school teacher once explained to my daughter that error speaks to you like a little imp on your shoulder whispering lies to you. She was told, don't believe them. Brush your shoulder. On the day she shared that with our family, we were driving to my husband's parents' home to visit. While lunch was being prepared, she, her brother, and her dad decided to play a game of tag in the yard. And when her dad ran and stepped into a hole, he twisted his ankle and was lying on the ground. And she ran to him and she said, "Why don't you get up?" And when he explained what had happened, she said, "Dad, brush your shoulder." And he did. He would later explain that her strong conviction and trust in God inspired him to stand. And by the way, he was relatively new to science, and when we were first married in those early years with the children, this was his first Christian Science healing. I just want to make that, I think it's important. He felt her conviction, he felt her love. And then he found that the pain and swelling quickly subsided. So, if you don't take away anything else from what I've said to you today, brush your shoulder. Aggressive mental suggestions are tricky because, again, they claim to be your own thought. Don't be fooled. We must daily watch our thought, and then we will defend ourselves best against them. Human consciousness imbued with the Christ naturally eliminates any false belief of minds many and sees mortal mind as the impostor it is. Having this state of consciousness, Mrs. Eddy refers to as the human and divine coincidence. And to describe the phenomena of outgrowing mortal beliefs, she states, in divine revelation, material and corporeal selfhood disappear and the spiritual idea is understood. Daily get to see this process. This is our practice of Christian Science, outgrowing these mortal beliefs that have nothing to do with us, and being the man of God that we are now and always have been. I'm just going to share one of the most insidious claims that must be outgrown is the belief that man is an aging mortal with a material body subject to the passage of time, the beliefs of heredity, diminishment, growing ineptitude, and frailty. That's a whole lot of nonsense. I just want to ask, what does going around the sun have to do with you? God's eternal, immortal, spiritual idea. Mrs. Eddy said 3 little words that we should always remember. It's the best antidote. Never record age. Never. It isn't applicable to you. We only measure the unfolding of good because we are spiritual beings who have never been born. As a practicing Christian Scientist, we all know this. This is not new news, but we all get to prove it in our own unique way. In 2013, I sat on my sunglasses and they broke. To replace them, I needed to see an optometrist because my driver's license requires me to wear prescription lenses. So I needed to have an eye exam to replace them. And the optometrist prescribed new glasses and said, "Well, at your age, you're developing cataracts. We'll have to be watching this one." I left the office and I denied the claim and didn't think about it again for a few months until I was writing an address at my computer. And all of a sudden, I couldn't seem to wipe a film off of one of my eyes. Then I remembered the suggestion from the optometrist, delayed hypnotism. I bought it. I thought I had fought against it. I thought I'd said the truth, but obviously at some level I had agreed with her, and I got right to work. I read everything I could about true vision, and there was no matter. However, it didn't seem to matter. The blurriness persisted. The day came that I had to board the plane to go give my address, and my eye was still blurry. However, I was pretty happy. I was actually enjoying the message that I had been writing about, and the title of that talk was Now is Eternity. While I delivered the talk, it became so clear to me that there was no age, and that man is an eternal spiritual being of light. When I finished my talk, I saw clearly out of both eyes, and it has never come back. In fact, recently, once again, I had to replace those sunglasses, and I haven't been back for an eye exam at the at the driver's license place. I went in and the optometrist never said a word about a cataract and also said, well, you really don't need these glasses. He said, the reason they're so blurry for you right now is because you're seeing without the prescription. And I can honestly say I am on my knees in deep gratitude for what we understand about man as a Christian Scientist. Truth understood is effective for each one of us individually, and it is uplifting collectively for all mankind. So what you're knowing for yourself, you're knowing for the world. In the May 1943 Christian Science Journal, Julia M. Johnston wrote an article titled From Zone to Zone. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Even if you are, read it again. It's just so perfect for today. In it, she states, spiritual facts, when discerned and accepted, affect global events as naturally as individual situations. As humanity progresses out of the chaos of materialistic belief, inspired thought, becoming aware of the unaltered divine order, necessarily, eagerly reaches out for further spiritual perception wherewith to behold the unshaken reality of things. Your spiritualized thought has an uplifting effect on the universe. Every idea of mind includes every other idea. All is one. There is no time. There is nothing that separates us. Just as when my son was in Afghanistan, it didn't matter he was halfway across the world. The oneness of mind precludes time and distance and puts all of us together simultaneously. Therefore, what blesses one truly blesses all. You are that bright light on the hill, Beacon Haven. You. You are a beacon of hope for all mankind. And to love our fellow man is fulfilling our duty to God. The law of love is manifested in Scripture that we read, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. As we live love, we bring truth to light. On an international flight, my husband and I had just been served our meal, and as you know, at that point, the trays are collected, the lights are dimmed, hoping everybody would rest. And I was just dozing off when I heard a lot of commotion across the center section of the seats and on the other side of this large airplane. A young man and an older woman were arguing loudly. The flight attendant escorted the woman to another seat and said to the man, if you do not settle down, we're turning this plane around. I felt great compassion for all of them. It occurred to me that they were all innocent. Mortal mind was the culprit, and they were all hearing the angels they needed to feel calm and not be affected by any aggressive mental suggestions. I was looking at the man and smiling, not intentionally, it just happened that way. But he caught my eye, and the flight attendant eventually walked over to me with a folded newspaper. She said to me, please accept this newspaper. The man wants me to give it to you. I was touched. I looked up and mouthed thank you to them. The paper was a lovely gesture and helped me to know that he had felt God's love. I was just an auxiliary. I was just there doing what we all do, just living love, being love. And it was felt. Love is palpable. Just as I said to you earlier, walking into this room today, you can feel that love. It's amazing. And good news, the rest of that flight was uneventful. So whether you're facing down a lack of safety, a physical problem, a relationship challenge, or uncertainty of any kind, it is God's infinite goodness that delivers us from all evil. God's love fills all space, as Mrs. Eddy wrote. The depth, breadth, height, might, majesty, and glory of infinite love fill all space. That is enough. Love is our sufficiency, and there is nothing love cannot do. Mrs. Eddy once said to her students, and this is recorded in We Knew Mary Baker Eddy's second edition by Sue Mims, what is the best way to do instantaneous healing? It is to love. Just live love. Be it. Love, love, love. Do not know anything but love. Be all love. So please go forward today knowing that you are the loved of love. You are adored in every way possible, and you naturally express love effortlessly because it's your identity. It's who you are. Through the Christ, you are the light of truth and love, and God is with you constantly. And you bring your safety with you wherever you are all the time. Therefore, do not worry, doubt, or fear. Brush your shoulder, rejoice, be glad, give thanks. God is a law of love governing you and the whole universe, and his care doth e'er surround you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. We will be brushing our shoulders. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. In closing, I'll read Mary Baker Eddy's New Year's gift, a prayer for the big children. Father, Mother, God, lovingly thee I seek, patient, meek in the way thou hast, be it slow or fast, up to thee. Thank you.